Thyroid hormone. So how it works, how it interacts with the steroidogenic pathway, how it creates testosterone, why it's important. How do I know? Well, when I was 17, I looked like this. I essentially developed like a woman after puberty. Now I have 1,500 nanograms per deciliter. And I'm going to tell you how I did it. I'll give you all the tools you need in your little toolbox so that you can use them. So thyroid hormone, let's begin with, let's say the main function that this hormone has, which is metabolism and protein synthesis. And you might be saying, yeah, well, protein synthesis, of course I want to have, more muscle mass and I want to, build more muscle, but like, how does that affect testosterone? Like, I want testosterone improvements. Bear with me. So, metabolism and protein synthesis, essentially our metabolism and our protein synthesis, but mainly the metabolism, mainly how much energy our body needs to fuel the processes in our body. Keep in mind, 75% of our basal metabolic rate is composed of our brain, right? So our brain uses 75% of our basal metabolic rate. Then obviously we add to that exercise and stuff, it becomes different, but 75% is the brain. The metabolism uses... So the metabolism is influenced by two key hormones, and you guessed it, one of them is thyroid hormone. And especially T3, we have T3 and T4, right? T3, but also T4. Now, T3 is the one we want most because it's the most active one. It does the job. T4 is, it's like a right-hand man. Do you know what I mean? Now, what's the second one? Growth hormone, right? So growth hormone. I changed pen here because this one was kind of, wonky. What about protein synthesis? Why is protein synthesis important, right? So protein in our body is, imagine a house, right? So a house has bricks, it has, whatever the fuck it's built, the skeleton of the house. It has hydraulics, like the plumbing, it has like the electrical system, it has like insulation and stuff. Protein is not only muscle. Protein does not only make muscle. It's not only the bodybuilding culture and like bro lifters. No. Everything in our body is made of protein, right? Imagine a house, we have like the skeleton, that's like bones and muscle, that's protein. What about, I said the electricity of the house? That's like neurotransmitters, right? Protein. Not all hormones are proteins, right? There are, for example, testosterone is not a protein, it's a cholesterol-based hormone. But insulin, but growth hormone, these are proteins, right? What about enzymes? They're also proteins. I'm going to talk about them here, right? All that to say that the better we are at synthesizing protein, the more building blocks we have to make a tremendous house, right? Not only like aesthetically and like muscles and like masculine and all that stuff, but also the performance, the health, how well it works. Do you know what I mean? So, over here, I essentially distilled my first ever video, the most, let's say, fundamental information about how testosterone is synthesized. So we start with either exogenous cholesterol, which we get from our diet, so which we ingest through eggs and through animal liver, right, 12 eggs a day. Or we have, so that's exogenous, or we have endogenous cholesterol, essentially one synthesized by our liver. How is it synthesized? Essentially, it's synthesized from the base, right? Remember, the way we model everything here. A goes to B, this is our base, this is our product, right? That's a nice crown. Limited by our rate-limiting enzyme X, or rate-limiting factor, whatever. It can be magnesium, it doesn't have to be an enzyme, usually is. Acetyl-CoA, with this enzyme HMG, makes endogenous cholesterol, then together with LDL, so essentially cholesterol together with LDL creates this sort of ship, as I like to, the metaphor I always like to use, the ship with a cargo, which then is able to be transported into either the adrenals to make cortisol or into the testes to make testosterone and then dihydrotestosterone, right? All that to say, the higher the metabolism, the more eggs we can eat, right? Naturally. Because it's not going to be stored as fat, it's going to be used. Metabolism. What about acetyl-CoA? What is acetyl-CoA? Acetyl-CoA is a product of our metabolism. What happens when you eat too much? You become fat. What happens when your metabolism is high and you eat too much? Now, if you eat too much, that means you're still going to be fat. But what happens when you upregulate your metabolism and keep the same food? You're going to make more acetyl-CoA, which means more endogenous cholesterol synthesized, which means more cholesterol in the blood, which means more of these hormones. Do you get what I'm saying? What about HMG, the rate-limiting enzyme for this interaction, right? What is it mostly stimulated by? Fasting and thyroid hormones, T3 and T4, right? Thyroid hormones, metabolism, right? This is what we're focusing on today. Let's take this a step further, man. So we talked about protein synthesis. These are all enzymes, right? Protein synthesis. What about star protein? Obviously, it's also a protein. What does star protein need? It needs to be synthesized, but it needs ATP. How do we get ATP? That's also a product of our metabolism. The better the metabolism, the more ATP. Let's go again. What about C3PO? It's not actually called C3PO, right? It's C11, whatever the fuck. C3PO, the rate limiting enzyme for this entire step, for this entire synthesis step, what is it controlled by, right? This entire step is controlled by C3PO. What does C3PO need? What is it influenced by? Metabolism, fats, insulin, right? Metabolism, all that stuff. And then there's another interaction with 5-alpha reductase, which I will say in the next step, right? All that to say, this is extremely fucking important. This is extremely fucking important. The higher our metabolism, the more food we can eat, and so the house we make is better. We build a fucking castle, not a house. Okay, great. Let's talk about direct effects on steroidogenesis, right? How does thyroid hormone, how does T3 directly stimulate or influence, how is it a factor directly in the process of production of steroid hormones? Well, number one, well, in this case number two, we have metabolism, is its influence on androgenic receptors, right? Androgen receptors, right? What does it do? It upregulates them. Why is that important? Imagine we have a lot of hormone, imagine we have a lot of ships, right? It works the same with cholesterol. We have a lot of ships in the water, but few ports that actually are able to take the ship in, take the cargo out and put it over to something else to be stored, to be brought further, right? We need a lot of ports as well as a lot of ships. What are androgen receptors? They're nothing more than ports. What happens when you, what is dopamine sensitivity? It's when you have dopamine in the system, but there are no receptors. So you don't have signaling. What we want is the signaling on a genetic level that this does, right? What does thyroid hormone do, T3? It influences, it upregulates androgenic receptors. So we have more signaling. So we have more masculine gene expression. Whatever it is, we want to feel less fear, boom, that's signaling. We want to make more muscle, androgenic effects, that's signaling. We want to have a more masculine like face and store less body fat and grow more and have stronger bones, that's signaling. Whatever we want to do, that's all signaling, man. And what happens, biochemistry drives behavior, so you have behavior changes as well. You become more of a risk taker, you become less prone to like emotional instability, right? Emotional resilience, all these things, androgen receptors, okay? Number three, now we come back to this whole thing. So when testosterone is made, some of that testosterone, a couple percent, I don't know exactly the number, is transformed into DHT. Now, why is that important? Because DHT, let me just write that here, DHT, this, is between 2.5 to 10x potency. It is 2.5 to 10 times more potent when it comes to this whole like androgen receptor and masculine gene signaling and all these things, cell signaling. Now, why 2.5 to 10? Because it depends on the cell, right? So obviously some cells are going to have more, they're going to be more, display more potency, and some cells less potency. Why is that? Because of something called binding affinity, which means that it binds more readily. It also stays bound to the receptor, which means there's more, net gene signaling. It doesn't matter. All you need to know is this is more powerful than this, right? And how is this made, right? We have so this is kind of wonky, but it's 5-alpha reductase. It's a very important enzyme. What does this enzyme do? It transforms testosterone into DHT. So naturally, if you think like me, you're like, fuck, I want this because this is more powerful. I want more powerful effects. How do I increase 5-alpha reductase? Well, it turns out you can actually increase the genetic expression of 5-alpha reductase through the upregulation of thyroid hormone T3, right? So you can literally change your genes, change the way your genes are expressed, epigenetic changes, right? Caused by the adaptation of our body, by upregulating T3. So more T3, right, leads to an upregulated gene expression of 5-alpha, no, not like this, 5-alpha reductase, okay, leading to more DHT, and DHT is fucking king, bro. DHT is king. So these are the three main things that thyroid hormone does, right? Let's move on to how to optimize it. What is it made of? How do we actually implement all this knowledge to optimize it and shoot this thing through the fucking roof? How do we optimize this whole thing? How do we model this so that we can optimize each single ingredient, right? Let's model this in the same way we model this reaction right here. So we have our base, right, our A. We have our product B, which we want to increase. In this case, it's our thyroid hormone T3 and T4. And this is our product. And we have a modulator, we have a rate limiting enzyme or protein or, you know, or building block X, right? So what is our base in this situation? What are thyroid hormones actually made from? So thyroid hormones are made from L-tyrosine bound to iodine, right? These are two building blocks for A, similarly to how, you know, the building block for testosterone is cholesterol, and obviously LDL, which is transporter, right? But this is a building block. These are building blocks for our tyrosine, right? So we take these two and we make T3 and T4. So how do we optimize L-tyrosine? How do we optimize iodine? Where are these substances found? Well, L-tyrosine is found in meats, right? Whether it's turkey, whether it's beef, pork, chicken breast, even fish, eggs. This is where L-tyrosine is found. So, you know, eat more meat. But L-tyrosine can also be supplemented, right? You can take supplementation. The recommended dose is between 500 grams to 2000, sorry, not grams, milligrams. 5,000 milligrams to 2,000 milligrams, right? Do I recommend taking supplementation for L-tyrosine? Yes, because L-tyrosine, if you remember the video on dopamine, it has another interaction. If you remember, L-tyrosine is actually a precursor to dopamine. So naturally, following this rule, if this is our dopamine, if this is our L-tyrosine, the more L-tyrosine we have, the more dopamine we have. What are the downstream consequences on testosterone, right? If we have dopa, remember, if we have the dopa, we have testosterone, right? One influences the other, so dopamine influences testosterone through gonadotropin-releasing hormone, stimulating luteinizing hormone, which stimulates the testes to produce more testosterone, and also testosterone actually stimulates the production of dopamine, so it's a feedback loop, right? Testosterone stimulates dopamine through tyrosine hydroxylase. I'm not going to write it down, but you get the idea, right? So we have indirect effects from supplementing L-tyrosine, which are on dopamine, which indirectly also influence testosterone. But also dopamine itself, we want to have, you know, elevated. What does dopamine do? It influences our drive. It influences our motivation to, you know, to work, to drive for status, to drive for progress. You know what I mean? It makes effort feel good, similarly to testosterone. So I'm going to get rid of this. Do I recommend supplementation of L-tyrosine? Yes, because it has these two effects. Now, what about what about tolerance, right? Because this L-tyrosine, also another precursor to dopamine, which is L-dopa, these substances may cause tolerance, right? They may cause it such that the body produces less dopamine. So it is advisable to cycle these substances. How do I do this? I cycle every single supplement. What I do is I take supplements 5 days a week, and then 2 days a week I'm off of them. Whether it's vitamin D3, which I'm going to talk in a bit, whether it's zinc, magnesium, anything, I cycle them, right? So L-tyrosine, supplementation 500 milligrams to 2000 milligrams, that's the dose. You want to take that preferably in the morning, not like early on in the morning when you take your caffeine. Try to get those like dopamine hits sort of one after the other, right? The cold shower, the caffeine, the dopamine from L-tyrosine, L-dopa, etc., and cycle them. What manufacturer of L-tyrosine do I recommend? I always recommend Now Foods. Brian Johnson uses them. They have decent prices and they have good products, right? Now Foods. L-tyrosine, so we have that. What about iodine, right? Where is iodine found? Iodine, I'm going to write it here, iodine is found in sea salt, right? Sea salt is iodized. It contains iodine. So immediately the implementation, use sea salt, right? Don't use not sea salt, although a lot of salt that is not sea salt is also iodized. It's also supplemented with iodine. But there's another way. You can actually supplement this. And in my opinion, the best supplement to take iodine is potassium iodide, right? Potassium iodide. It has potassium, so it's, it has that electrolyte, which when you do sauna, when you go to the gym, when you sweat, you use that. Metabolic stress, right? Depletion of these minerals such as magnesium, potassium, zinc, etc., right? And also it contains iodide. I take it from Now Foods as well. I take it 5 days a week, similar to all my other supplements. Okay, so we have iodine, right? These two have formed a molecule called T3 and T4. But what is our X in this situation? What determines how much of these two are actually transformed into T3 and T4? Well, let me remove this for a second so that I make some space. But in this situation, our limiting factor, our main limiting factor, there's three. There's a trifecta, right? Fucking hell, man. They call me eloquent over here. So the first one is selenium, right? Selenium. What is selenium? It's basically a mineral. It's similar to magnesium, similar to zinc, all these things. Now, where is selenium found? The best place, the best source of selenium is in Brazil nuts. You can literally eat 5 Brazil nuts and you have the daily dosage of, recommended dosage of selenium. Tremendous. Now, I personally avoid nuts. I don't need seeds, I don't need nuts, I don't need like legumes and leafy greens because of the, the phytic acids, the oxalates, the tannins, all these things which essentially cause malabsorption of other minerals, right? So yes, there's a lot of selenium in Brazil nuts, right? Brazil nuts. But are they actually absorbed in the gut because of the compounds that are present in these plants? Yeah, there is malabsorption. So what I like to do is, again, I like to do supplementation. Now Foods, 5 days a week, 1 selenium pill, boom. Tremendous. So that's number one. What is number two? This is the main compound that is needed for this enzyme, right? Because it's controlled by an enzyme. But this enzyme needs these 3 things, and they are what controls how much of that enzyme is actually manifested. Obviously also metabolism, but protein synthesis, but these things are needed. So that's selenium. Number 2 is zinc. And I'm already going to write zinc citrate because that is the best form of zinc. It's dirt cheap and you can absorb it on an empty stomach, on a full stomach, anything. Here again, zinc is very prone to malabsorption. So when you eat zinc with bread, you're literally not going to absorb any of it. They made a study with oysters. Oysters have a shit ton of zinc, and essentially one group ate zinc, so they ate oysters. Another group didn't eat. Fucking hell. One group ate oysters. Another group ate oysters with bread, and it turned out group number 2 had no absorption of zinc into the bloodstream, right? So zinc citrate, again, take this. This is supplementation as well. Just buy it. It's dirt cheap. Take this with your supplements, right? The rule I always say, the fundamental rule of supplementation, When you break your fast, when you eat your first meal, I want you to not eat any vegetables, any breads, any legumes. Literally only eat animal products and animal products, so milk as well. Animal products, milk products, honey, and fruit. Only eat these 4 things the first meal of the day, because you're going to have a shit ton of absorption. Your body is going to upregulate all these things because you're going to get it's like an anabolic window basically when you break a fast, and you become very efficient and effective at using those nutrients. So take that supplementation with your other things, so with your vitamin D, with your selenium, with your boron, with all the other supplements you take. Or you can also take zinc before you go to sleep, right? That's a second protocol. You choose. Before you sleep, you can take this on an empty stomach. What happens between 12 and 4 a.m.? Most of your testosterone is actually made then, right? So you essentially give it's most readily available between 12 and 4 a.m. because you gave it before you go to sleep. So you can take this with your magnesium glycinate before you go to sleep, and that works as well. So that's number 2. What about number 3? Number 3 is vitamin D3. Now I'm going to make an entire video on this because this vitamin is actually quite a magical one. It actually acts like a steroid hormone. I'm going to talk about this in the future. But here, again, implementation. Where is this found? This is found in foods, and this is also found when being in the sun, right? When the sun is on your eyes, it's on your skin, vitamin D3 is synthesized in the body. Do we get enough D3? Probably not. So I like to supplement. Now, what is the recommended dose? Doctors recommend 2,000 international units. People who actually know their shit about testosterone, they recommend between 4, and that's also what I recommend, 4K to 10K, so 10,000 international units, right? Now, keep in mind, this has to be taken with fat. If fat is not present, this will literally just be excreted. You need fat so that this can dissolve in it, and then it can be absorbed. So make sure you eat this with eggs, you know what I mean, during your first meal. Now, there's one thing that I want to say before we end. T3 and T4 don't actually work the same way. These are 2 different things. They're 2 different hormones. But this one, as I said in the early part of the video, this one is the more potent one. This one is like dihydrotestosterone to testosterone, right? We want more of this. And actually, T4 often is converted into T3, right? Just like testosterone is converted into DHT. And it just so happens that these 3 minerals, these 3 substances are bottlenecks, they're rate limiters for this thing. So not only by taking care of this, not only are you making T3 and T4, but you're also transforming a lot of the T4 into the T3. So you have 2 effects, right? And it just so happens that the enzyme which does this is basically needs the same building blocks as this enzyme. Okay, so we're done. So let's recap. Thyroid hormone is important for your metabolism. Metabolism is important for testosterone production. It's important for your performance, how well you feel, everything. It's also important for protein synthesis. Protein is not only used as a building block for our muscles, but it's also used as a building block for neurotransmitters, for enzymes like alpha reductase, for protein like star protein, for many things, right? Just like a house has many systems. Proteins actually make up these systems in our body. We talked about the upregulation of androgen receptors caused by T3. Finally we've talked about the influence of T3 on 5-alpha reductase, how it influences gene expression, right? Literal gene expression. So we induce epigenetic changes in order to express the gene which produces 5-alpha reductase more. And hence we have more dihydrotestosterone, which has a 2.5 to 10x potency when it comes to testosterone. And that's what we want. All right. And finally, we've talked about how to optimize them. We have our L-tyrosine, we have our iodine, where we get that from. We have our rate limiting factors being selenium, zinc, and D3. Where we get that from, what are the doses of supplements, what are the substrate of supplements. And finally, we've talked about T3 and T4 and the transition. So we're done. Now, to the ones who have stayed, to the killers, the dopamine addicts are gone, the creme de la creme is left, right? The cream of the crop. So now, if you're serious about this, if this resonates and you want to take this to another level, you want to change your life, you want to dedicate 3 months in order to literally go 180 degrees, and you want to take this seriously, you don't want to spend 10 years like I did, learning about this shit, trying it, does this work, buying every single supplement, wasting money, wasting time, what I mean, like becoming obsessed with this. If you want to like figure this shit out and have actionable steps and have someone do this with you, below is a link. It's a link to my calendar. You can book a 30-minute talk with me. During that 30-minute talk, we're getting to know each other. You don't pay for that, we're going to talk. Now, if I see certain character traits within you, if I see that I'm able to do this with you in 3 months, I'm going to make you an offer. As I often say, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse, right? Like the Godfather. But seriously, consider this. If you don't want to do this, no problem. You can continue watching this. I'm going to provide you value 2 to 3 times a week. I'm going to give you things that you don't get anywhere else. Watch my other videos, my paradigms, the way I think about things, the way I incorporate everything. The truth is, bro, because I've had to beat so many fucking demons in my life, not only like having bitch tits at 17 while my friends were, having fun and going around with 6-packs, eating like shit, but psychological things, sexual repressions, various like emotional states, identity problems, fucking dog shit self-esteem, spiritual stuff like masculinity and like, all that stuff, right? Neediness. Bro, I've beaten so many fucking demons that they know my name down there. So if that resonates, if you struggle with these things, book that 30-minute call and let's see if we vibe. Anyways, that's it for now, and I'll see you next week, bro. Ciao.